Generation Warfare, and I'm your current host, John Nelson. In this episode, unfortunately, we will be looking at what the current conflict in Palestine and Israel has taught me. I wasn't going to make a video on this because generally I think such things are noise and distractions from one's own life. Why do I say noise? Certainly it's unfortunate that there is pain and suffering, and war is never good. This channel is about trying to avoid war for oneself and for one's children, and also about building prosperity. But certainly avoiding war is a big aspect of it. But there's nothing you or I can do to change it. I assume none of my audience are high power players in the military or governments of any of the countries involved, and so there's really nothing you can do. And even if you had family, say in Israel, I have a friend I talked to who has some family there. If that family isn't, if you can't personally do anything to help them get out, or even worse, if they have no plans on leaving, then there's very little you can do for them. I mean, you can encourage them to leave and get out and, provide them shelter. But aside from that, there's not a whole lot you can do. And so it's really a distraction. And I also think that there's a lot of propaganda going on right now. If you get better at sixth generation warfare, you'll start to understand some of the propaganda and the emotional hooks in oneself. The horrors of war are always highlighted at the beginning of war in order to dehumanize the other side. And that is on clear display here. Whether or not some of the events happened, I'm not making any claims. But I also know, I don't know. I am fairly damn certain that you don't know either. So cut the bullshit. None of us know what happened. And I certainly know that media, government, politicians, military officials, all these people lie. And most of you out there are also of the opinion that they're full of shit too. You just think they're full of shit when it's inconvenient for you, and you don't think they're full of shit when it's not inconvenient for you. When you want to be emotionally triggered, you let them emotionally trigger you. But when you don't want to be emotionally triggered, you call their BS. So cut it out, hold yourself accountable, hold yourself honest to what your perspective is. This little tidbit doesn't really have much to do with the overall perspective, but I wanted to talk about war and why war is bad. War is not bad because of death. Everyone dies, so don't be afraid of death. What are your options when you die? Okay, you can go into the void, nothingness. That's a possibility. You could be reincarnated. Even if you're reincarnated as a toad, that seems like a pretty cool experience. Or you get reincarnated as a human. Great. You go to heaven. That sounds lovely. Or you go to hell. Well, I don't have a guilty conscience, and so going to hell really isn't on my radar. And I hope for anyone listening to this channel that you have a clear enough conscience that you don't feel like you're going to hell either. If you do feel like there's a possibility you're going to hell, then you really, really, really need to start working on your sixth generation warfare to get back in line with your spiritual self. So, that being said, 3 out of the 4 options there aren't scary. Don't be afraid of death. Why war is bad is because of the pain and suffering that can come from it. It's unnecessary. You are causing other people harm. That will weigh on your conscience. I assume it would weigh on my conscience. I can't tell you what will weigh on your conscience, but certainly causing people harm is not good for one's spiritual health, in my opinion. So that's on the spiritual side. And then on the material side, destruction. It's just unnecessary destruction. I don't like seeing my 2-year-old knocking over a tower that my 4-year-old builds. It's unnecessary to cause destruction when somebody has put their time, effort, labor, blood, sweat, and tears into creating things to come and at a push of a button or the drop of a bomb to just destroy it is sickening. The amount of man hours that have gone into building infrastructure of, say, the Gaza Strip or anywhere that is getting blown up by war, uh, it's disgusting. Now now all that needs to be rebuilt. There is a fallacy that war is good for the economy. This was talked about in World War II. This is an example from World War II. They always say, well, oh, yeah, World War II stimulated the U.S. economy. Bullshit. Bullshit. It's called the Glazier's fallacy. If you don't know it, look it up. The Glazier's fallacy is the idea that in a small town, people should go around breaking windows because it gives the glazier, the person who would repair the windows, work. And this is why the government statistics on labor and all that are full of shit too, because it's not measuring productivity. It's marking, whether or not somebody is working. Creating jobs. What jobs are you creating? Just because you're creating a job doesn't mean the job is worth a shit. So, what the glazier's fallacy is, what could have been done instead? You have to look at the other side of what could have been. So, instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars on munitions to then destroy billions of dollars in infrastructure, imagine if the billions of dollars in munitions was put to humanitarian efforts or into improving infrastructure or any other kind of productive thing that would have actually improved people's lives. But no, you destroy the material things that people need and want in their life, and you cause them suffering at the same time. Why does, and I'm sounding a little hyped up. I wasn't planning on that, and I'm really not all that emotionally perturbed by this, but I think it's bullshit. So I'm letting you hear it. War grabs so many people's attention because it is sensationalized. The propaganda is designed to trigger. Like I said above, I'm not saying what did or did not happen, but propaganda needs some gruesome examples to motivate people to kill each other and to divide people. Because not that people want to hold hands and say kumbaya. They don't, and I don't think that they should. People should have conflict. It should be addressed at a minimal person-to-person level. Conflict should not be addressed at a country-to-country level or a collective-to-collective level. So, babies being decapitated. Could that have happened? Yes, it certainly could have happened. Do I think it happened? Probably not. Do you know that it happened? No. So stop pretending like you know it happened, and stop giving it as an example for then going and killing other babies. It sounds completely absurd. So what triggered me to ultimately make this video? I've been watching my normal roundup of YouTube channels as I normally do, and people are just throwing out strong opinions out there. None of them are anywhere like... That's not true. There are some opinions that are close to mine, but a lot of them are not. And so I've come to realize that my perspective, I guess, I want to put it out there. It's not really about me. It's about expressing how frustrated I am that I am so far removed from everyone else. It is also an attempt for me to get better at expressing myself so that I can convey these ideas to my children so that they don't end up like these retards I'm listening to on the internet who are going to help promote the idea of war and get people killed, potentially their own children in some instances. So today I was listening to one podcast or YouTube video, and the person said there is nothing that would ever make him change his mind and side with Palestine. That he also said that Israel needs to finish the job, that it was quote. It might have been Netanyahu. He was quoting about how Israel always gets close to finishing the job. It never does. It's the same idea that back after 9/11, we should just turn the Middle East to glass by nuking the whole area. I'm not saying I'm above. Uh, I think I am now, but I'm not saying I was ever above this sort of thinking. In fact, the shit that came out of my mind probably around 2001 was probably fairly similar. I think I always thought that was completely absurd to turn the whole Middle East into glass. But certainly I've had and spread bad ideas around conflict. But just the things I'm hearing, it's like, man, people need to think a little bit more about what they are actually promoting. Because in this instance, the guy is talking about mass destruction and death, finishing the job. What's probably going to happen, because urban warfare is very atrocious, is very gruesome, is very hard. And also, I've come to hear a couple places that there are many in the Israeli, certainly reservists, and also the Israeli military as a whole, because they have that conscription thing, mandatory service. There's a lot of people that don't quite have the heart for this fight. I mean, they're certainly disgusted by the reports they've heard about the propaganda, but many of them are also calling kind of BS that there was such a large scale raid into Israel, and it was uncountered for, I think, 7 hours is the official report. None of that matters. It's all. I'm talking just right now about how people might be viewing it. I don't know that the Israeli fighting force is going to be as strong as many people think it is, going in and kicking down doors, because Gaza is like a city, kicking down doors and blasting the people on the other side. So what might end up happening, and this is hypothetical, I didn't really want to get into hypotheticals here. They've told everyone, I guess, to move south of the Gaza River. They might just level the whole fucking city. Like, big ass fucking bombs. Lots of them. Turn it to fucking rubble. Anything, nothing left standing. No doors to kick in. No stairs to clear and try to, stairs are a kill point in urban warfare. You're going up a set of stairs, you're fucking dead if there's somebody up at the top of the gun. So just level the whole city. No stairs, no doors. Make it fucking easy. And then as you're clearing through nice and slow, just anytime you hit resistance, just hit that area again with some more artillery. And it'll be an easier job. Be able to shoot people with rifles from 100, 200 yards away instead of 6 feet away, or have to stab them with a bayonet. Seems like an easier job for me. But I'm not, don't want to get sidetracked on the tactics of how this fight might unfold. So, yeah. So, what I found myself and what promoted me to make this video is it's kind of a boo-hoo for me. I'm not a victim here. I really don't give a shit. But it's unfortunate that I have such a divergent opinion from most people. It'd be one thing if I was one step away from people in my thinking. I might be able to easily bridge that gap, but as I'm going to describe here, I'm at least 2, probably 3 solid philosophical steps away from people on this conflict. And I don't really know how to talk to people about it. And so this video is an attempt at getting better. Perhaps using emotional tone in my voice is one way I can do that. And that's coming naturally. I don't know where that's coming from, but I need to get better at expressing this, because ultimately my 7th generation warfare fight depends on my kids not ending up in a senseless conflict that will get them killed. So in the person that in particular I shared before about finishing the job and never siding with Palestine, his position was essentially that Israel is right, Palestine is wrong, Palestine needs to be punished by Israel. That is a simplistic version. I am probably condensing it down more than is justified, but it's also I don't think it's too far from where the perspective is and how let me not get ahead of myself. So step 1, there are evils committed on both sides. This should be easy for everyone to fathom. And so how one can clearly be on one side of the equation or pick a side easily when there are atrocities committed by both, often that's foolish. So some statistics I've heard over since the formation of Israel, there's a 10-to-1 kill ratio, more Palestinians being killed than Israelis. So if you look by that statistic, yeah, okay, Palestinians do things like are being reported in the news currently. But why might they be doing it? Like, it's a simple question. Like, are these people just evil? I heard Ben Shapiro. What did fucking Ben Shapiro say? Ben Shapiro said, I don't know, Pierce Morgan, I don't know, some channel. He said, you or I would think that people need a motivation to commit these evils, that these Palestinians were promoted in some way. Yeah, like a 10-to-1 death ratio. But no, these Palestinians aren't. They're just straight evil. They are not motivated by the same human conditions and emotions and motivations that you or I are motivated by. He came as close to saying that they are animals as you could possibly say without directly saying it. And he may have called them animals at some point. I'm not sure. So that's not good. And because he sees them as animals, he now thinks that he's justified in exterminating them. So what motivation do you have? Like the double-sided, the one-sidedness, double-sidedness, the hypocrisy is rampant. He's projecting onto them that they're not motivated by human emotion and human motivations. They don't have any sort of moral compass or human empathy, and so he is not going to grant them the same. He's going to treat them as animals and exterminate them. So I don't know. It's a blind fighting the blind, frankly. And I went on, started researching some of the doomsday prophecy stuff with building the third temple and all that. If you look at the Jewish prophecy, the Christian prophecy, and the Muslim prophecy, man, is it set up for just the religious zealots on all sides to just fucking wipe each other out. Like, in a couple of years, it's possible that, like, there won't be religion on the earth because all the religious people will just kill each other. They're setting themselves up quite well to just genocide the fuck out of each other. So, yeah, there's evils committed on all sides, and I'm not even aware of what most of those are, and I'm sure many people who've studied this conflict in particular would be able to spit off many. The problem is that experts tend to favor their one side, and they spit off the atrocities committed by the other, and neglect the ones on their own side. And this is not particular to the Palestine-Israel conflict. This is all conflict. This, what we are seeing right now is like crystal clear of how this shit happens, and it's a great time to learn, guys. Like, if for the one thing good about war is you can learn how to avoid war in the future, and when war has not happened in a long time, people get soft and forget why war came to be, how it came to be, and how it can, or how and why it should be avoided. So take this time to take a meta view of what's going on. Don't get involved in the rat race. Step above it and look down and see broadly what is happening out there. And man, it's going to be extremely enlightening. I look forward in a weird way to all the wisdom I will be able to gain from watching this unfold. Unfortunately. So to the people who ignore the atrocities, you have to be aware of who you are backing before you support them. And this is like the person I mentioned above was just an American guy. Like, doesn't really have a stick in the fight. You know, just some run-of-the-mill conservative-minded guy in America. Why you have such strong opinions on who should kill who, I don't know. Step 2, there isn't even sides. And this is where... So step 1, I might be able to get people to open up and accept that like, yeah, there's atrocities on all sides. It's not really all that clear. Maybe we can take a step back and admit like what some of the things we've done wrong, some of the things you've done wrong, etc. But step 2, this is where I lose a lot of people. There aren't even sides. Well, there are so many sides that you can't count the sides, is a more accurate way of putting it. There are as many perspectives on this conflict, or any conflict, as there are people. So in history, when you go back and you look at, you know, why did World War II start? Why did the Civil War start? Why did this war start? The historians want to like break it down into like one, maybe a handful of reasons. But that's bullshit. Like, yeah, the politicians and the people making the big broad decisions may have had a handful of reasons, but ultimately you have to get the soldiers to do the fighting. You have to get the logisticians to supply the fighters. You have to get the manufacturers to make the stuff that the logisticians will supply to the fighters. It's very complex, and each one of those people has their own motivation. Some people just want to work, and so they don't give a shit if they are riveting a rivet on a bomber plane or if they're stuffing a bomb full of explosives. They're not dropping it, so it's not really on their conscience, right? Other people wanted to join the military because they wanted free college, and now they're shooting somebody in the head. Or maybe they joined the military because they're slightly sociopathic and they don't really give a shit about the cause of the war that most people are rallied by. They just want to cause destruction. They want to cause some harm. Yeah, they want to kill some people. So there's endless motivations as to why war happens. And this can be applied to economics in peacetime as well. The politicians want to make you think that they stimulated the economy, that they created all these jobs. Bullshit. It's not up to them. It's up to the actions of the billions of people in the world, what they do and do not do. To negate the decisions of the individual and ascribe it to the leader or to the small minority at the top is nonsense. So there aren't sides in a conflict, or there are many sides. Just look at Israel. Israel is not even homogenous by like religion. Yes, you could call it like they're Jews, but what does that mean? Like some of them are there's a lot of homosexuals in Israel. There's an atheist. There's a lot of non-practicing, a lot of people who do practice. There's not even like a ethnic background that's homogenous. A lot of them came from Europe after World War II and the Holocaust and all that, or the Russian Revolution and that stuff. Some of them have been living in the Middle East all along, and so those are two very different ethnic backgrounds. Same thing in Palestine. The there's a stronger push, I think, in the media to turn all Palestinians into terrorists. When, as is the case with Israel, I'm sure in Palestine they want to make the Israelis look bloodthirsty. Most people don't give a shit about the conflict. They just want peace for themselves and they want to live their life in a mostly uninterrupted way. And so to classify everyone as a terrorist or wanting blood is nonsense. Certainly that might motivate some people. Maybe even over there it might be a non-insignificant minority, but it's not most people. Most people don't want blood. So, and this is, there not being two sides. This is a form of like, I don't know, black magic. I don't know. I don't know much about magic, but I know that there is something about ascribing human characteristics to a non-human entity. And that this is done all the time. This is the case when you say Israel is doing this or the United States is doing this. Bullshit. The United States did not send an aircraft carrier to the Eastern Mediterranean. The United States doesn't have any capacity to act. It is not alive. It is not a person. It is not a man or a woman. The United States is a concept. Israel is a concept. They do not do actions. And this is, it seems like semantics, but it's really just lazy speech. And the lazy speech ultimately has real life consequences. Because the more you talk about the United States as an entity that's capable of making decisions, the more you negate the decisions that the individuals can, will, or should make in there, and how those decisions that the people are making might be in conflict with one another, the complexity of all the decisions being made. So, I mean, that's why, like, the person that motivated me to make this video, it's a simplistic view, and I'm going multiple layers deeper to draw more understanding of what is going on. But yeah, the United States doesn't do anything. Palestine does not do anything. It is not a person, does not have agency, and because of that, the innocent people in Palestine should not be held responsible for the actions of the guilty. Likewise, in Israel, it is not a person, has no capacity to act. The innocent people in Israel should not be held accountable for the actions of the guilty. Do not hold the collective responsible for the few. That's how war is perpetuated. Every side just focuses on what the other collective did, gives them justification. They go and do something. People over here that were not affected by that something latch onto it and think it's justification for them to do something else. It's really quite simple. And complex at the same time. But from a meta perspective, like it's funny when you see it. Step 3, and this is if people could get to step 2, if people could take those 2 steps towards my perspective, like that would be amazing. I don't think I'll be able to get most people to that close to me. I think I will with my children, just because I have that influence, and I can, when they become an appropriate age, I can go through these sort of things with them in real time. But step three, I don't know. This is getting so far out there, it doesn't even necessarily relate to the conflict itself. But step three, our path in life is an individual journey, individual spiritual journey. So you should not make allegiances with others just based on DNA or religion, which is odd because, I'm hoping to make allegiances with my children with this seventh generation warfare. That's what seventh generation warfare is ultimately about. You could define that relationship as an allegiance. However, that's why I think, in seventh generation warfare, I'm going to promote my kids to go out and see the world, see what other options are out there, and come back with not quite the same, but a very similar and compatible philosophical worldview of their own. I don't want the worldview that they have to be mine. I want them to explore, come back, and have something similar enough that we can work together in a very synergistic way. But just to have, when I say don't make allegiances with others based on DNA or religion, I'm more just talking about what we're seeing with the tribalness of this Israeli-Palestine conflict. Especially if those allegiances have you turn a blind eye to atrocity. It's one thing to say, yeah, we're buddies, we both, Muslims and Jews pray to the same God. But you can say we're buddies, we pray to the same God, we're buddy, but as soon as they do something wrong, you should call it out. You should say, "Whoa, man, what are you doing?" Don't be the one to bury your buddy's the body of the person they murdered. Likewise, and more important, if someone, and this is going to be a stretch for most people, if someone of your blood, religion, or the collective that you identify with is attacked, this does not mean that you personally were attacked. Now, there may be people out there who want to destroy whatever the collective identity is that you share in common. So in that instance, it does kind of feel like a attack on you, but it is not an attack on you. Learn to protect yourself. In that instance, you should learn to protect yourself from the few radicals that are out there. And war funnels people and turns them into radicals. So now more and more people in Israel are going to become bloodthirsty for Palestinian blood, and more people in Palestine are going to become bloodthirsty for Israeli blood. You can still back out at any time. You do not need to be part of that, and I'm about to get into that a little bit more. Before we go on, I do understand that in my environment I'm safe and the need for protection is minimal. I also understand why people feel the need to have collective protection, as in like the form of a government or something. I would have been a nationalist for most of my life. I don't know if I've really fully even understood the concept of a nation or whatever, but a countryist. I believed in America for a good portion of my life. So I do understand. I'm not just like, I was not given this perspective from my parents. Let me tell you that much. I came to this perspective on my own. But the point is that once you divide yourself into an us and then them, you have begun to sow your own demise. By dividing yourself into a collective, some sort of collective divide, you are manifesting conflict between your group, or the group you pretend to be part of, because really there is no group. It's people gathering over a delusion. But you have begun to manifest the conflict between the group you ascribe to and any group that is in contest with that. You are manifesting that. By saying us and them, you have shown people that you think there's some people here and there's some people there, and that there is a difference. And it can, however small that is, you are starting to divide, and you don't get to, it's not up to you to decide how other people take that. And so people will take offense. I mean, they don't have to, but it is human nature, in my experience, it is human nature that when you say, I am here with my buddies, and you are there, and you're not my buddy, that people will get offended. And because of that, people will then, in turn, act differently towards you. And people will then say, okay, well, I got my buddies, so fuck off. And you say, whoa, why are you saying fuck off to me? Give you a little shove. And they say, whoa, no one fucking shoves me. I'm going to pull out a fucking knife on you. And you say, huh, you brought a knife to a gunfight. I'm pulling out a fucking gun. And then people start dying. So, but it all started with the collective. So this is why in my 6th generation war, I came to the understanding that I am what I am, and that's all that I am. And that you are what you are, and that's all that you are. We individually are infinitely complex beings, and we are not to be put into tidy little collective groups. I try my best, and I'm still reworking myself to not ascribe labels for myself or for others. Labels, be it professional, ideological, political, or even labels based around things like hobbies or interests. So I wouldn't say I'm a carpenter or a remodeler for profession. I would say I work on people's homes. I wouldn't say ideologically. I can't even come up with an ideological perspective for me. Or a political one. A hobby. I wouldn't say, not that I've done it in a while, but when I used to run a lot, I would try not to say I am a runner. I would say I like to run. Or any word that has a ist at the end of it, just remove the ist and just say that you have ideas that are close to the ism. It gives you a much more complex perspective of yourself, because whether or not you realize it, you have a notion of what that ist is, what a person who is what a biker is like, what a fisherman is like, what a Republican is like, what a Democrat is like. You have notions of what all these are. You have archetypes, I guess I should say. You have archetypes of what these things are. And when you collectively ascribe it to yourself, you are actually starting to erase yourself. Just because you like something doesn't mean that you should just be absorbed by the collective archetype of what that is. Keep yourself pure, keep yourself clean, keep yourself who you are. Think of yourself as a infinitely complex being that is not put into tidy little boxes, and give other people the same respect. I try not to exert on others labels, because the second I put a label on them, I'll give them a bunch of extra baggage that has nothing to do with them. So, you know, as soon as I say, oh, you're an Asian woman. Oh, you must be a bad driver. You know, it's the stereotypes, and the stereotypes might not even be bad. You know, a stereotype could be ultimately seen as a overall positive thing, but it might have nothing to do with the person you're talking about. So don't do it. Continuously explore who the person is, and this will help you a lot in developing your relationships, because somebody says I am a ist, you won't just say, oh, okay, now I know everything about you in that regard, so I don't need to ask any questions. No, there's tons of questions you should be asking them. um, you know, somebody says they're a hippie. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? You ascribe as a hippie? Tell me about that. You know, I don't just want to assume that they're pot smoking, free loving person that loves tie dye. So that being said, I can't tell people how they can, should, or whatever identify. And if people want to use collectives, I grant them that respect. I have started telling people, you know, if I think the conversation is at all philosophically worthy of expressing this, because most people would just look at me cross-eyed, that you accept a collective label for yourself, be prepared to accept the collective negatives that come from that. That you say you are an ist or whatever because you want people to understand you in some easy way. Well, if there's anything negative about that label, I'm going to ascribe it to you because you chose it. And I'll also tell you that you can just drop it at any time. And I'll go back to thinking of you as a beautiful, complex, infinitely complex individual. And that I didn't think you're worthy of such a simplistic little box to be put in. It's best to be oneself and ditch the collective identity and the victim consciousness by proxy, which we're seeing a lot of. That because somebody happened to somebody similar to me, that means I am attacked, and because I am being attacked, I now am a victim, and I now can justify my actions to go and do something horrible. No, you were not attacked. And the fact that somebody who used the same word to describe themselves as you used to describe yourself does not give you, because that person was attacked, does not give you the right to then go and attack some stranger. So if you can adopt this philosophy that I've kind of conveyed here to your children, then perhaps you can save them from the suffering of war. And that's really why, I mean, it's a motivation for this video, but it's also certainly a major motivation of this channel. Most people fighting in war were never bloodthirsty people. They didn't foresee themselves in war or want to be part of war. I can't say all. I personally joined the military, heavily propagandized by the History Channel, wanted to understand what the experience of combat would be like. And I wanted to explore how I would react in that. And I understand now that's a retarded position to be in. But I understood that I was putting myself in a position where I may have to kill somebody. Luckily, I never did. But most people, especially, you know, the wars with the conscriptions, now volunteer military, most people are joining for college degrees. And I'll tell a story about how I know that from my personal life. But there are sociopaths in there. So some people are bloodthirsty. And you should just be aware that is a possibility and not not pretend like that doesn't exist. But most people get tricked into participating in war. They they heard some horror on the news. The news, the people who lie. That news article was sent to them by the Department of Defense or the military of whatever country, who are also liars, and it was also filtered through an intelligence agency who are also known liars. People lie all the time. It's about at that level. It's there's different motivations, and I'm not doing the Ben Shapiro thing of saying they're not human. They are still human. I think they're just very misdirected. If you want to understand how I view such people, you can go back and watch my video on Robert McNamara, 11 Lessons in the War, 11 Lessons in the Life of Robert McNamara, the Fog of War. I forget what the video is actually titled, but I reviewed the documentary Fog of War, 11 Lessons in the Life of Robert S. McNamara. He was a confused guy, still human. Did not deserve to be killed, not that he was. But what he needs is to be directed, shepherded, I think the Christians would say, and educated. And so, yeah. So most people got tricked into participating in war. And then they get shot, they get disemboweled, they commit atrocities like blowing up people. I deployed with a guy who he thinks the artillery strike he called in on some Afghan civilians changed the rules of engagement for the entire theater. Whether or not that's true, that it was his attack that did in fact change the rules of engagement, doesn't really matter. He believes he did. He knows that he said fire, grid coordinate, blah, 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 and a bunch of innocent people got vaporized and turned to pink mist. And he has to live with that on his conscience for the rest of his life. And he told me he thought that it was a reason he could not get his wife pregnant. Talk about serious fucking shit. So avoid war. In closing, what has this conflict of Palestine and Israel taught me? I can't believe I've gone on for 45 minutes. It has taught me that people are very, very, very far away from me philosophically in understanding the dynamics that lead into war and conflict. That they're so far away that I'm having a hard time engaging in conversation that would be meaningful enough to get them to steer away from war. That it's like I have a fly on a leash and it's being pulled towards the zapping light, and I can't, no matter how hard I pull the leash, it's just gonna go into the zapping light and get zapped. I don't know who puts a fly on a leash. Doesn't matter. And number two, what this conflict has taught me is I need to get better at expressing how war can be avoided. Because it can. I'm not saying that I don't have any grandiose plans that I will be able to end all wars, or even that in 30 generations from now, if all of 7th generation warfare went off with a hitch, and in 30 generations we have tens of thousands of people doing 7th generation warfare, that war would even be avoided at that point. I'm not concerning myself with whether or not war will be eradicated from the entire earth. I know that I can avoid war, even though I didn't. I went to Afghanistan. And I know that with some direction of myself and positive nurturing, that I can heavily, 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 heavily influence my children to avoid war themselves. And they can do it for their children, and they can do it for their children. And it will make all the difference. Thank you for watching. This is Seventh Generation Warfare, and this is what the current conflict in Israel and Palestine has taught me.